Your husband? You mean Michael? Oh no, he can't possibly come to the phone right now. He's incredibly swamped with very important matters. That's how Charlotte's Tuesday morning began, a knot tightening in her stomach as she heard a woman's voice answer her husband's cell phone. A voice laced with a condescending tone, as if Charlotte had no right to call her own husband Michael. All she'd intended was a gentle reminder about his blood pressure medication. A sudden panic had seized her when she realised he'd left them on the kitchen counter, having rushed out the door. She'd been ready to drop everything, grab her keys and drive them straight to his downtown office, no questions asked. Instead, she was met with a curt dismissal from some snippy young thing. Pipsqueak was the only word that came to mind for such an individual. But what important matters could possibly keep him so occupied that this woman was answering his private line? And where was he, anyway? Charlotte knew every single person in Michael's architectural firm. There wasn't a single soul who would dare speak to her with such brazen impudence. Furious, she dialed again. And again. The same unfamiliar voice answered. Honey, did I not make myself perfectly clear the first time? Michael isn't available to speak with you right now. He's tied up, and please stop calling this number. There was a pause, a beat of ominous silence, before the woman added, Or I'll have no choice but to block your calls. Charlotte stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind reeling. How in the world is this even possible? What on earth is going on? Does my husband have a mistress? Who else would even dare to behave this way? Michael, usually so private, wouldn't even let her, his wife, touch his phone without asking. Suddenly, the forgotten pills, her son Mark's unmade breakfast, and her own carefully laid plans for the day evaporated from her mind. Everything vanished in a single, sickening wave as she envisioned her husband somewhere, perhaps in a lavish hotel suite, entangled with another woman. Mum, are you feeling all right? You look a little green. Mark, her 20-year-old son, padded into the kitchen, already showered and dressed for school. He was an echo of his father, a pang of resemblance that pierced Charlotte's heart. The same lanky build, the same unruly sandy blonde hair that resisted every comb, the same twinkling hazel eyes and a smattering of freckles across his nose. Charlotte shook her head, forcing a weak smile. She wouldn't burden her son with such raw, ugly suspicions. Just didn't sleep well, sweetie, and Dad forgot his medication. Could you drop them off for him? After a quick, silent breakfast, she ushered her son out the door. Then, with a heavy heart, Charlotte set out for her own errands, though her list was far from urgent. A trip to the local's farmer market for fresh produce, a quick stop at the grocery store for a few forgotten staples, and then to the big box store for some household cleaners to replace the empty bottles under the sink. That was her day, in essence. Then back home to prepare lunch and dinner, tidy up the house, and start a load of laundry. For years, this had been her rhythm, her quiet life. Michael had always been against her working outside the home. He never explicitly forbade it, of course, but his words had always held a persuasive power. I don't want other men looking at you. And honestly, I don't want you to stress yourself. Why bother, when I can provide everything we need? I want a happy, healthy wife, not someone worn out like an old workhorse. Back then she was young and naive, his words stirring not defiance, but a deep sense of wonder. This was what the storybooks promised, a caring, attentive, loving husband. And that's exactly what she believed she had. In her eyes, Michael was a true hero, nearly 10 years her senior. He was serious, generous, and the compliments he showered upon her None of Charlotte's peers and their youthful banter could ever compare. He had been smitten with her from the start. Tall and graceful, like a willow in the spring breeze, her eyes 2 deep pools the colour of sea glass, and her hair a cascade of spun gold, thick and radiant. She, too, was serious, responsible, not like her flighty, giggling friends who lived only for laughter and chasing boys. Charlotte had dreamt of a career, of saving up to buy her own little cottage. Her path had crossed with Michael's many times. Their town was small, and they held similar positions in different companies, their bosses even close friends. They'd meet here and there, sometimes at work, sometimes outside of it. Usually they wouldn't even notice each other, simply passing by without a greeting. But one brisk autumn afternoon everything changed. Michael approached her directly. At first she didn't even recognize him, until he gently reminded her of their previous encounters. He confessed he had been watching her for a while, too shy to speak. He laid it all out, right there on the sidewalk, and then, with a hopeful glint in his hazel eyes, asked if she'd be willing to have dinner with him. Well, a quiet dinner wouldn't hurt, she decided, agreeing. She figured there was no harm in it. They would share a meal, then go their separate ways. She certainly wasn't opposed to a bit of company at a table, and if Michael had decided he liked her, well, that was his business, not hers. What she couldn't have imagined, though, was how utterly different it would be from anything she'd ever anticipated. Michael picked her up in his sleek obsidian sedan, a small bouquet of creamy roses resting on the passenger seat. He didn't take her to a restaurant. Instead, he drove her straight to the coast, to a secluded stretch of beach where the waves whispered secrets to the shore. They drove for hours, the miles melting away beneath the tyres. A flicker of fear had even begun to stir within her, but he quickly reassured her. "I've made arrangements," he said, his voice a comforting balm. "Tomorrow's your day off, isn't it? We'll relax, take a dip in the ocean. It's summer, after all. Don't you worry, we'll have separate rooms at the inn." But they ended up sharing one room that night. That's just how it happened. And Charlotte, truth be told, didn't feel a flicker of shame. Michael had utterly captivated her, and he, in turn, hadn't left her side, fulfilling her every whim, every unspoken wish. Even when that short, sun-drenched escape by the coast ended, nothing seemed to change between them. Then came the joyful wedding, the cosy little home they bought together in the quiet suburbs, and the blessed arrival of their son. After her maternity leave, Charlotte never returned to her job. Michael had insisted, and honestly, she hadn't put up much of a fight. His words about wanting a happy, healthy wife had resonated deeply, painting a picture of a devoted husband who only wanted her well-being. Years, like autumn leaves caught in a breeze, had drifted by, and now at 47, Charlotte found herself standing on the precipice of an unimaginable truth. Michael was even older, though he still carried himself with a youthful vigour, and their handsome son, Mark, a true blend of both of them, was working part-time at his father's firm, while finishing his final year at college. Life had thrown them curveballs before, but infidelity? This was a raw, devastating blow she had never encountered. She didn't know how to proceed, yet, pretending nothing had happened, simply sweeping this colossal betrayal under the rug was an impossibility, and Michael, surprisingly, didn't seem particularly troubled. Oh, he'd given his mistress a stern talking to, of course, because she knew he never allowed anyone to touch his private cell phone. But he wasn't about to end things over such a minor infraction. She might have a bit of a sharp tongue, but she was so much younger than Charlotte. She was prettier, too, and gazed at him not with the weary eyes of a settled homemaker worn down by the daily grind, but with eager, adoring, and a touch of sly admiration. With her, he felt younger himself, more energetic, stronger. Charlotte was constantly reminding him about his health, gently nagging him to take his pills. But his young paramour, on the other hand, just laughed, tossing his medication into the wastebasket. "Oh, you don't need those, Michael. You're so incredibly vital. My strong young man." Charlotte met him at the door with a thunderous glare, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. No customary greeting, no usual kiss. She didn't even invite him to sit down for dinner. "Well, what are you staring at? Surely you're not still upset?" Michael genuinely couldn't grasp why she was turning this into such a profound tragedy. "So, I have a mistress. So what? I'm not leaving our family, and I'm certainly not parading her around for everyone to see. As far as the world knows, we're still a strong, loving couple." "Oh, so there's nothing for me to be upset about, is that it? And the fact that some little harpy answered your phone instead of you, that's just an unfortunate misunderstanding." Her husband nodded, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Well, there you have it. You understand perfectly. She won't do it again, so just put it out of your head." Charlotte gasped, her breath catching in her throat, choked by indignation. "Put it out of my head? Michael, put it out of my head? Are you mocking me? You have a mistress and I'm your wife, and you're telling me to just forget it?" He sighed, shrugging his shoulders, as if this entire conversation were a tiresome burden. "What do you want to hear, Charlotte? Let's be honest. After 45, you're not exactly in your prime, are you? It's not becoming for you to dictate terms or throw jealous scenes. You're a little too late to the game, dear. I could have left you, actually, but what good would that do? But I'll be noble about this. I won't abandon you. I'm perfectly happy with our life together. You'll continue to take care of the house, but don't interfere in my personal affairs. And anyway, since the table's empty, I'm going out. I have other plans." Without waiting for a single word from his wife, a smug expression settling on his face, Michael strode out the door. He had no idea, not the slightest inkling, that his settled homemaker, wife, was about to take matters into her own hands that very day, and what she was about to do would be far from to his liking. Charlotte initially felt the sting of tears, but then realized she couldn't summon a single one. Instead, a cold resolve settled in her heart. She picked up her phone and called her mother first, then her son, Mark. Within an hour, she had poured out her heart to them, explaining everything. Then she shared the plan that was already taking shape in her mind. Her mother was vehemently against it, pleading and wringing her hands, but her son, to Charlotte's immense relief, was supportive and even offered his help. "Charlotte, why? You had such a good life. Why are you determined to ruin everything?" her mother wailed, fumbling for her blood pressure pills. "Me? I decided? Mamma, I think you weren't listening carefully enough. My actions are a consequence of Michael's foolishness. I didn't cheat on him, and I didn't come home and suggest we just forget what happened." Later, as night deepened and Michael finally returned home, a most interesting scene awaited him. His wife and son were seated together on the living room sofa, deep in animated conversation. Spread out on the coffee table before them were various documents. "What are you two doing in here?" he asked, stepping closer. "Oh, Michael, why don't you have a seat? You'll understand everything in a moment." He sat, his eyes scanning the papers, and then he froze, his smug expression replaced by a look of dawning horror. "Aha! You guessed it. Well, Mark and I have been discussing the most appropriate way to proceed. You see, you transferred half of your business to him, didn't you? And a portion of that, as your wife, belongs to me. It's the same with the house. We bought it together, allocated a share to our son, and then to you and me." Michael swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. "So what?" "So, Michael, our son stands with the truth. He, like me, disapproves of your actions and is therefore prepared to testify on my behalf in court. So, you should think carefully about what you're going to do, because I am not ruling out the division of assets. We would be entitled to 2/3 of everything, if it comes to that." Michael's face turned ashen. He hadn't for a moment conceived that Charlotte would be this furious with him. He'd suspected she'd be upset, certainly, but for it to escalate to divorce, to the gut-wrenching ache in his chest and the sudden numbness in his fingertips as they discussed dividing assets, that was beyond his comprehension. Michael rubbed his palm against his chest and lay out a shaky breath. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't form. Then a creeping darkness began to cloud his vision. He heard Mark's panicked voice calling his name, felt Charlotte's frantic hands shaking his shoulder, sensed his body tilting precariously to the side, but he couldn't even twitch a muscle. The next thing he knew, he was waking up in a stark, white hospital room. Mark was there, along with a kindly nurse. "Where's Mum?" he croaked, barely recognizing his own voice. "Your wife's speaking with the doctor, Mr. Moore. She'll be in soon." "What happened to me?" he asked, a dull ache throbbing behind his temples. "Nothing serious, thankfully. Just a bit of a fright. And you haven't been taking your medication, have you? Your heart just had a little wobble. Now you rest, and I'll be back tomorrow." Mark left, and then Charlotte walked in. She smoothed the hospital blanket over him, then placed a covered container of food and a small bag of fresh fruit on his bedside table. "Charlotte, I—" he began, his voice weak and pleading. "Get well, Michael," she interrupted, her tone devoid of warmth, like the chill of an autumn morning. Then without another word she turned and walked out. He returned home a week later, his body still recovering, but his wife's demeanour remained unchanged. Yes, she cooked for him, left his medications meticulously organised, and a glass of water by his bed, but she slept in the guest room. And when Michael finally felt strong enough to move about without assistance, Charlotte spoke, her voice clear and unwavering. "Don't for a moment think I've forgiven you, Michael. Once you're fully recovered, I'm filing for divorce." Also, he was surprised that their son Mark had moved out. He'd found a wonderful young woman, and they'd rented their own small apartment, a new chapter beginning for him. And then there was the mistress, the young woman Michael had so admired, whose vibrant energy he'd so craved. She surprised him most of all. Seeing him after his illness, she wrinkled her nose, pulling away when he tried to embrace her. "Michael, what is it with you? You smell like a pharmacy, like some old man. Please don't touch me. And anyway, I heard you're getting a divorce. I'm truly sorry to hear that. I understand you have a lot on your plate right now, but I can't keep dating with you. I've met someone else." "But what about me? About us?" Michael stammered, disbelief clouding his face. "What about you, Michael? Have you looked in a mirror lately? You're not 20 anymore. You didn't actually think I'd stick with you until the grave, did you? You have aches and pains, doctor's appointments, all those elderly concerns. Honestly, they're just not for me." He was in shock. So this was it. To her, he was an old man. But when she was spending his money, she seemed to have a very different opinion, didn't she? No matter, he thought. I still have my wife. Charlotte might be threatening divorce, but I can see it. She won't go through with it. He clung to that delusion right up until the day the summons arrived in the mail. A second heart attack nearly claimed him when he read the official papers confirming that she had indeed filed for divorce. He raged at her, tried to appeal to her conscience. "But I'm ill, Charlotte, and you're abandoning me now? How could you? I supported you your whole life." "You, my dear, supported the family, your wife and son," Charlotte countered, her voice steady. "And I, in turn, provided you with everything so that you wouldn't have to worry about a thing. And how have you repaid me? By writing me off at 45? Her eyes held a flicker of cold fire. "Well, you're past 50 now, Michael." And so the court proceedings began, and when it was all over, Michael was left with next to nothing. A minor stake in his son's business, a host of nagging health issues, and a small, sterile studio apartment that was purchased for him after the divorce was finalised. Charlotte, meanwhile, lived a life free of worries. She watched her son marry a wonderful young woman, took a blissful vacation abroad, found fulfilling work at a local community centre, and even began seeing a kind, gentle man who truly cherished her. Michael sometimes crossed her mind, but without malice. His life, she knew, had punished him enough.